Hi, this tutorial continues on from my tutorial on getting started with Movie Edit Pro 2015 and covers some basic editing tasks using the 2016 version. We'll look at the timeline mode in detail, how to move objects around, various ways to insert new objects on the timeline, and then we'll inspect the objects themselves. I'm going to use the term MEP rather than saying Movie Edit Pro each time. I'll continue on using the Multi-Movie Seasons project. Just to review some of the important points from my tutorial on getting started in MEP, make sure that you downloaded the free add-ons and updated to the latest version. Look for these under the top Help menu, Install Extra Content, Free Downloads, Download Extra Content. Check all boxes and download and install everything. Then check for the update online. And don't forget, you have access to the help manual here. Also, make sure that your program settings are the way you want, under File, Settings, Program. Look at the settings under all of the tabs. Make sure that your playback is set to the right device and that your folders are set up. We imported 3 objects in the last tutorial and created a title. We'll stay in StoryBoard mode for now. Let's say that we have a long video clip, but we only want to import part of it. For this, I'll select the Range or Brackets button of a new video clip in the media pool to preview it. In the preview monitor, you also have range brackets. I'll press on play and watch the video. When it gets to where I want the start of my import, I'll press on the left range bracket. When it gets to where I want to end the import, I'll press the right range bracket. The video keeps playing. If I change my mind, I can just press on the bracket again, stop playback, and check the range. There's a button to play back only the range. You can drag the brackets to the desired start and end positions. There are 2 ways to get this range onto the timeline. One is to click on the Apply button, and if the mode is Automatic Application, the clip with the selected range will be added to the end of the timeline on track 1 and track 1 only. Since I'm now in preview mode and the source file isn't active, I'll select it again from the media pool, and we see that the range is still there. The other way to import the range is to hold down the left mouse button and drag the image from the monitor down onto the storyboard area and drop it at the end, or wherever you want. I'll put it at the end. Since I still have the source clip in the monitor, I can go back and select another area by moving the brackets and send it or drag it onto the storyboard, and so on. I'll undo those. Storyboard mode is great for initially bringing videos and images into the movie and moving them around. You can add text and do some other work in this mode, but Timeline is the main mode to use for editing. So I'll switch to it by pressing on the Timeline button. Now we see all of our objects over time, including objects for the title. Looking around the project window, you'll find many useful tools. There's a row of buttons at the top left. These are the ones that you'll use the most often. At the left are the Undo and Redo buttons, Delete, Title Editor, Chapters. New in 2016 is the Set Snap Marker. Next is a magnet or object grid, which is very important and allows you to snap to the beginning or end of objects and to the new snap markers to properly line up objects. Then we have group objects and ungroup objects. Next are the very important mouse modes. The first one is to move a single object. Next is all objects to the right of the selected object on the same track. And the third one is to move all of the objects on all of the tracks that are even with, or above and below, and to the right of the selected object. Next are some buttons that pop down using the right mouse button. The first series we won't review in this tutorial. The next one contains very important splitting buttons that we'll look at in the next tutorial. Finally, the various import modes. We'll look at these in detail. Get to know how to use these buttons and their shortcuts. In Timeline mode, the project window consists of tracks onto which you can bring in objects like video files, photos, and audio files. We'll come back to this. By default, there are 32 tracks, but you can have up to 99 tracks in the Plus and Premium versions, which is more than you can see on the screen at one time. Let's scroll down using the right-hand scroll slider. If ever you have an image showing up in the preview monitor that you don't see on the upper tracks, scroll down. Maybe it's hiding there. Easier still, click on the full screen button and then scroll down if necessary. To get the screen back to where you were before, press on the same little button at the upper right. There are no special tracks in MAP. They can all do everything, but there are some things to watch out for, like audio, and we'll see this later. When we added a clip in StoryBoard, it was actually placed on track 1 by default. When we added a title to the clip in StoryBoard, the title was placed on track 3 by default. That's if there's nothing else on track 3. The title can be moved to another track if need be, or anywhere else that you want. It's up to you to manage your tracks. Now let's take a close look at selecting objects. To select one object, click on it using the left mouse button. To move objects around, simply select an object and drag it where you want while holding down the left mouse button. To deselect an object, click in the blank area. Before continuing on, let's take a little look at the track protocol. There's a protocol in MAP that's different from many other video programs. Track 1 is at the bottom, like floors in a building. You're always looking down from the top, so you'll see the highest track first. Thus, looking down, we first see the title, which is on track 3. Since only the text is visible in the track and the rest is transparent, we also see the next track down in the transparent part. In this case, we see the clip on track 1. Now if I move the clip from track 1 to track 4, we don't see the title anymore. We'll come back to this in the next tutorial. If you add narration or music, you can put the audio file on any track that has space available. It's highly recommended to keep only audio on a track that has audio and nothing else, like a title. As we'll soon see, if you mute a track, you'll not only turn off the audio, you'll also turn off the video. So track management is important. Unlike images, if you have audio superimposed on more than one track, then you'll hear all of the audio combined, and you may have to edit the volume of one or more objects or turn the volume off. We'll see this later when we inspect objects. Now let's look at the track buttons at the left side of the tracks. S is for solo, which means that only that track will be seen or heard during playback. In our case, soloing track 1 means that we won't see the title, which is on track 3. However, you can solo more than one track at a time. M is for mute, and it turns off the track, including both audio and video. The lock locks the track so that the objects can't be moved accidentally. The first up-down arrows expand the height of the track. Now we can see a blank box into which you can type a name for the track if you wish, like video track. Press enter to register it. Clicking again on the up-down button reduces the track to the previous size, but you can't see the track name anymore. The next down-up button reduces the height of the track. Clicking it again increases the height. You can also drag at the interface to make the track higher or smaller. Next is the track number. If you right-click in a blank part of this area, a menu appears with options to set the track to multicam mode or to adjust the height using the submenu. You can adjust all tracks as well. You may need to zoom out to see all of the objects on the timeline, or zoom in to see only the area that you're editing. Look at the scroll bar at the bottom. The length of the slider part can be changed by dragging either end of it, which is like zooming in or zooming out. I'll zoom in and then drag the scroll bar to the beginning or wherever I want. I'm not zooming in on an image, just on the clips in the timeline. Look at the buttons at the bottom right. Using the left mouse button, open the pop-down menu. Note this protocol. Where there's a small downwards arrow, use the left mouse button to open the pop-down, not the right button. There are some choices in the upper part. The zoom choices are in the lower part. You can zoom down to frame level, 5 frames, 1 second, etc. Next is an optimized timeline button that zooms out to show the entire timeline from start to end. The next button zooms in on the object. This expands the object on the timeline. Click the button again to go back. Then there's the minus button to zoom out and the plus button to zoom in on the timeline. I'll zoom out again to see the length of all of the clips and enough to show some space beyond the last clip. And now I'll adjust it to show the entire timeline. Now let's get back to the basic task of moving objects around. First, make sure that the magnet icon is lit up. This is a snap tool, and moving objects near the head or tail of another object will cause the object being moved to snap to the head or tail. Even the playback marker snaps to the head or tail of an object. I'll zoom out to see some empty space to the right of the timeline. I want to import another clip, but instead of clipping on the import button, I'll drag the clip onto the timeline and place the beginning of this new clip at the end of the last clip. Because the magnet's turned on, the beginning of this clip will snap to the end of the last clip, leaving no gap. Remember, it's important to leave no gaps on the timeline. Now, I want to import a photo, so I'll select one. I want to put this at the beginning, but there's already one there. So I'll have to move the existing video clips out of the way. I can drag them individually to the right, but that would be laborious. Or I can highlight all of the objects by lassoing them and dragging them. Or I can change the mouse mode. Let's look at these 3 buttons. Mouse mode is lit up, so moving an object only moves the selected object. The next button is mouse mode for a track, that is, for moving objects that are to the right of the selected object and on the same track. As soon as I select an object to move, everything that can move with it is highlighted, and everything on that track moves. Notice that the title on track 3 didn't move. I'll switch to the third mouse mode for all tracks to move objects that are to the right on all of the tracks. This includes those that are above and below. I'll grab and drag the first object to the right. Everything that starts to the right of the selected object on this track, and even with this object on tracks above and below, will be highlighted and moved. I'll leave a gap at the left for my photo. Select the photo and drag it onto the timeline. I left more than enough space for my photo, and I'm still in all tracks mouse mode, so I'll move everything back. Watch as I bring the beginning of the first video clip in line with the end of the photo. It snaps to it. That's the magnet effect. So I can just drop the objects there. There, we've just done our first real editing. Now there's a way to tell which mouse mode you're in when you're working on the timeline. I'll just expand this out a bit. And we're in single track mouse mode, and you can see that we have a little hand as the cursor. When I click to single track, we have a little rectangle there. And when do multi-track, we have a bigger dash rectangle. So again, hand, small rectangle, large rectangle, and that's how you can tell where you are. I'll undo all of that. We already saw that we can select more than one object at a time and move them all at the same time. The different mouse modes help facilitate the process. A last trick about moving objects. There's a group button. That's the chain link. Next to it is the unchain button, or the ungroup button. Select the 2 or more objects that you want to group by holding down the Control key and selecting each object, or by lassoing them. Click on the chain or group button, or use the shortcut G. The objects are now linked. Deselect them, and now select just one of the objects. All of the linked objects light up. If you drag one of these objects somewhere, all of the others move along with it. This is quite useful for keeping a title connected to a clip. To ungroup them, click on one of the objects and then click on the broken chain button, or use the shortcut Shift G. It's quite important to understand how to move objects using these tools, as this can be a great time saver. Imagine moving 100 objects individually just to insert something. And you don't want to leave any gaps. Remember to always check and be aware of which mouse mode button has focus before moving anything, or else you may end up moving objects that you don't want to. I want to add in another video clip. I'll select it and press on the preview button. Since this clip is longer than I want, I can select only the part that I want using the range markers, exactly the same as we did earlier in the storyboard mode. These markers can be moved and set manually. Now I'll drag the preview image onto the timeline at the end of the existing objects. I could select another range and import it, then another, and so on. Imagine if your source clip was 30 minutes long, but that you only wanted a few short pieces of it. This is how to select and import them. Now let's take a look at what we have. I'll set the playback marker at the beginning by dragging it, or clicking in the marker area, or simply using the home key. Press on play, or use the space bar to play to preview the movie. Remember before that we were previewing a source clip, but now we're previewing the timeline. So this monitor does double duty. To help illustrate the next commands, I'll add in a title downstream. And I'll add in an audio file onto track 4. This audio file covers the zone that we'll be looking at. It wouldn't be very convenient if we always had to move objects around to make space to insert a new clip in the middle of other objects. This little button here is for importing objects. With the playback marker here, I'll select the clip from the media pool and click on the Insert button. Clips inserted at the end of track 1, even if there are more clips beyond this point on other tracks. I'll undo that. If I click on the Preview button and then press on the Automatic Application Import button, the clip still goes to the end. As we saw in the storyboard mode, I could have selected a range in the preview monitor and clicked on the Import button, and the piece of clip still would have been inserted at the end. I'll undo that. Note that if a clip is selected in the media pool, and then this button here is clicked or changed, the selected clip will be inserted. Since you may not want to do this, make sure that you deselect all objects in the media pool by left-clicking in a blank area. This button has a few dots instead of a down arrow, so use the right mouse button to open the selection menu. Automatic appends the new clip to the end of the timeline as we saw. The other options are single track ripple, then we have multi-track ripple, then we have exchange, and overwrite. We've seen how to use single and multi-track modes for the mouse, so these will be similar. We now want to insert a clip. A clip is selected and the playback marker is partway along the clip, but I'll move it to the beginning of the clip, which is where I want to make the insertion. I'll select the clip from the media pool, right-click on the Import Mode pop-down, and select Single Track Ripple. The clip is inserted at the playback marker. Everything on track 1 moved to the right, but the title didn't move. It's no longer aligned with the beginning of the object on track 1. I'll undo that. Now let's see what happens if I move the playback marker to the middle of the clip and now select Single Track Ripple. It already has focus and the clip on the timeline is split and everything is moved to the right, including the part of the split clip, and the new clip is inserted. Again, the title doesn't move, so only objects on track 1 move. Undo. Now we'll go back to the beginning of the object. My clip in the media pool still selected. Right-click on the button and select Multi-Track Ripple. The clip's inserted and everything to the right moves to the right, including the title. However, the object on track 4 was split and the right part was moved to the right. Not what we wanted to do. I'll undo that. Did you notice that we were in mouse mode for all tracks? Let's switch this to single object mode and try multi-track ripple again. Same result. So the mouse mode has no effect on the import process. Next in the menu is exchange. This can get complicated if there are objects on more than one track. The clip to be exchanged is highlighted on the timeline, and the new clip is already selected in the media pool. Right-click on the Import button and select Exchange. The selected object is replaced by the new one. Since I'd selected a photo, the photo replaced the video clip and took on the length of the video clip. Normally, the photo would be the length defined in the program settings, but in this case, it changes to the length of the clip it replaced. I'll undo that. This time I'll select the video clip from the media pool, select the object to be exchanged, and click on the Exchange button. Now we see that the new clip is shorter than the old clip and that everything to the right and on the other tracks moved to the left. Keep in mind our problem with other objects to the right on track 4 that could overlap the long object that we have. Undo. This time I'll select the title. I've got my clip selected in the media pool, and I'll press on the Exchange button. Whoa! The title's replaced with a new object, but look what happened on track 1. The next object to the right got moved to the right, and now there's a gap, exactly the length of the additional length of the new object. Also notice that objects on other tracks moved to the right as well, like the title. I'll undo that. Now I'm going to do a little test on this audio track. I'm going to reduce the length of the clip, and I'm just going to show you that the clip that we're going to insert is shorter than the audio clip. Now press on Exchange, and whoa, that is a real mess right there. Look, we've got an overlap and we've got a gap left over here. So this is really something you have to watch out for and be aware of what happens when you use Exchange to make sure that you don't make a real mess. I'll undo that. The last item in the import pop-down is Overwrite. This mode only overwrites whatever is on track 1. It doesn't matter whether or not you select an object on the timeline, but the location of the playback marker is where the object or objects will start to be overwritten. I'll place the playback marker over the object with the title and select Overwrite. The clip on track 1 is split at the playback marker, and the new object overwrites whatever is to the right of the playback marker, including the following objects. This new object comes in at full length. If it's shorter than the clip that it's overwriting, then the last part of the original clip will follow afterwards. If the new clip is longer, then it will also overwrite the following clip or clips. Nothing happens to any objects on any other tracks. I'll undo that. To set the focus of the button back to automatic, deselect any objects in the media pool by clicking in a blank area of the media pool. Now right-click the pop-down menu and select Automatic. Nothing happens because no object was selected in the media pool. Now on to the last topic, inspecting an object. I'll zoom in on an object on the timeline. All objects have handles. If I grab the upper left handle and drag it towards the right, a fade in is created. So this is a fade handle. At the upper right is a fade out handle. Dragging it to the left creates a fade out. I'll put those back. The handle at the top middle changes the transparency level of the object so that you start to see an object that is underneath the object, that is, on a lower track number. Since we're on track 1, we only see the default black background. Just to illustrate how this works on another track, I'll take the title and I'll increase the size of it and change the color so we can really see how this works. If I drop the transparency on the title object, the title starts to become transparent and we see what is on track 1 in the text itself. The lower left handle allows you to increase the length of a clip towards the left, assuming you're not already at the beginning of the clip itself, and you can make an overlap or a transition with this. You can also reduce the length of the clip by dragging it towards the right. The lower right handle does exactly the same thing. If you're not at the exact end of the clip, you can drag it towards the right to make a transition, or back towards the left to decrease the length or to trim the object. If you go on the left or right hand side, somewhere around the middle, you'll see that the cursor changes to a double arrow. You can drag the edge of the clip towards the left, assuming you're not already at the beginning, and this will change the location of the cut point between the two clips. You can also drag it towards the right to reduce the length of the clip. On the right hand side, the same thing occurs, but you can only drag it up to the end of one of the clips. Of course, with images, there is no end, so you can drag as far as you want. The lower middle handle occurs only on a video clip that has audio on the same track. You don't see one on a photo because it has no audio. Raising the slider increases the volume, lowering it decreases the volume, and the volume can be turned off completely. So if you want to mute the audio on an object, this is the way to do it. Be careful not to raise the volume too much or you'll get clipping or distortion. I'll set it back to 0 dB, which is normal. I'll zoom back out. To illustrate some of what I just did, we'll go and take a look at this object here. Remember when I imported this clip, I trimmed it, so it's not the full length of the clip. If I move the clip that's to the right of it over to leave some space, I can now drag the end of the left clip towards the right out to the end of the original clip. And I can do some additional trimming just by dragging the end of it. I'll undo all of that. If I right-click on an object, a context menu appears. The content of the menu varies depending on the type of object, like a video, a photo, or audio. At the bottom of the menu is Object Properties. Look at what we have. There's the name of the file and the file location, including the folder. Remember, MEP uses this file, so don't move it or delete it from your hard drive. There's also the length played and the original length. They'll be different if only a part of the clip was imported or if the clip was trimmed or cut. There's more information like resolution, frame rate, and aspect ratio. Just to show you that we trimmed this clip when we imported it, I'll drag it down onto the second track and watch what happens. I can drag the right end out, or I can adjust its end position to some other location, and I can also drag the left end out. This way I can get the original length back, or I can adjust the ends to exactly where I want. Now let's take a look at the properties of a photo. How long is a photo? Right-click and look at the properties. We see that it's 6 seconds and a little bit more, as this was the default length. Remember, we set that length in the program settings. There's also a metadata tab that shows additional information about your original image. Now, I want to change the length to 7 seconds, so we'll close this, and right-click again, and select Photo Length, and in the box I'll change it from 6 to 7 seconds. Note that the seconds are second from the right end, and frames are at the end. Since my project's in NTSC format at 29.97 frames per second, I can't actually get the length to be exactly 7 seconds, but it will be within a frame of 7 seconds. When I accept, notice how the length increases and everything moves over towards the right. Again, watch out for the impact if you have objects on more than one track. They may or may not move depending on which mode is set. Now we've done a lot of editing and it's time to save. I've mentioned gaps several times. If there are any gaps in your project, meaning that there is no image at a particular location, MEP will protest when you try to export or burn to a DVD. Gaps are not desirable, so close them up as you edit. You don't want to get to the end of your project to find that you have 200 gaps to close up. Try doing a small test project to learn before tackling anything serious. Watch for my tutorial on Basic Editing Part 2, where I'll go into detail on the trimming commands. I hope that this has helped you get started properly in Magix Movie Edit Pro. Thank you for watching. Enjoy.